Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who, the cancelled years. In this video, we'll be covering season 45 of Doctor Who. So, let's get started. Season 45 would have been the second season for Robert Carlyle as the Doctor, the last season for Sheridan Smith as Sally Ryder, and the last season for Stephen Moffat as showrunner. This season would have marked the end of the Sally Ryder story, with it being Sheridan Smith's last season on the show. Not only this, but Stephen Moffat was stepping down as showrunner after working on the show for 5 years. Taking over as showrunner in season 46 would be writer Paul Cornell. Despite the fact that Smith and Moffat were leaving, Robert Carlyle decided to stay on for the next season. This season, like seasons 42 and 43, would have begun with a Christmas special. This special would have been A Christmas Carol, written by Stephen Moffat. It's essentially the same story as it is in real life, however without any companions, so the story would have had bits altered to make it work with just the Doctor. And now, let's get to the episodes. The first episode would have been Red Eyes, written by Stephen Moffat. This would have been set on modern day Earth and would have reintroduced Sally to the Doctor. We see the Doctor tracking down an alien signal in the night. Meanwhile, we see Sally on that same night, on a night out with her friend Nikki Williams, as portrayed by Georgia Moffat. And after some time, the Doctor bumps right into Sally. The Doctor is over the moon to see Sally again and asks what happened to her. But Sally has no idea who he is or what he's even going on about. And that's when the Doctor finally understands everything and why she always seemed to know more than she was letting on. The Sally that he was travelling with was from his future. The Doctor first met Sally in season 43, but Sally first meets the Doctor right now. Sally must go on to be a companion of his. However, somehow she ends up stuck in a far future, where she'll eventually meet his past self. The main villain of the story would have been a spirit alien prisoner named Gek that possesses people. We learn that Gek is trying to open a pocket universe, which contains the rest of his people, and free them from imprisonment and take over the Earth. We discover that you can tell when Gek possesses people as their eyes turn red. Eventually, however, the Doctor, with help from Sally and Nikki, are able to banish Gek from Earth and have him in prison with the rest of his people. At the end of the story, the Doctor offers Sally the chance to travel with him, and while she's unsure at first, she eventually accepts. The Doctor also offers Nikki the chance to travel, but she declines, as she doesn't know if she'd want to go or not. We then have a typical bigger on the inside scene, with Sally being blown away by the TARDIS, and the story ends with the two of them going on their first adventure. The second episode would have been The Beast Below, written by Stephen Moffat. This story would have been pretty much how it is in real life. The only difference would have been the character of Liz 10. As Sophie Okaneda was cast as the companion Eliza back in 2003, she would not have been cast as Liz 10. So in this universe, Liz 10 would instead be portrayed by Olivia Colman. Other than that though, it would have been pretty much the same story. The third episode would have been The Unicorn and the Wasp, written by Gareth Roberts. Again, the same story as it is in real life, and as such it doesn't really need discussing. The fourth episode would have been Brave New Town, written by Jonathan Clements. The story would have been set in a small seaside town in 1991. However, the Doctor and Sally soon notice that it seems the town is repeating the same day every day. It turns out that the year is actually 2008, and that the town isn't real, but instead a fake town which was created as a test ground by the Russians in Uzbekistan. The Doctor and Sally soon discover that the people of the town are actually Autons, who believe themselves to be actually human. However, the Nestine conscious has awakened and has made contact with the Autons, so that they can conquer the Earth and claim the oil so that they can make more plastic. Eventually, however, the consciousness signals are buried, which cuts off the Autons from the Nestine, and allows them to live their lives in peace. The 5th episode would have been War on Earth, written by Nicholas Briggs. This would have been yet another modern day unit story, featuring Penelope Wilton as Amanda Powell, Dave LeCaron as Ronnie, and David Tennant as Jonathan McCrimmon. The story begins with our unit cast. The unit team have tracked down a group of Zygons living in the London undergrounds. Unit tries to attack the Zygons, but the Zygons try and stop them. They tell them that they're the last of the Zygons, as their home planet was destroyed in the war. However, Unit doesn't believe them, and the battle breaks out between the two races. The Zygons say they originally wanted peace and to coexist, but now they've been attacked, they're going to take over the planet. And realising that things are about to get complicated, Amanda summons the Doctor down to Earth for help. The Doctor arrives and manages to stop the fighting and say that he'll help them work out a solution where everyone wins. Meanwhile, Sally goes off to find Nikki. The story would be then split into two interlinking plots. Plot A sees the Doctor working with Unit and a group of Zygons to come up with a solution where both humans and Zygons can coexist together. And while both groups originally have cold feet to the idea, they eventually agree that coexistence may be possible. And Plot B sees Sally going home to find Nikki, where the two catch up and Sally tells her about their travels. However, something is wrong with Nikki, as she doesn't seem herself, and is more interested in the Doctor than Sally. And we eventually discover that Nikki is in fact a Zygon duplicate. We learn that after the fight, the Zygons were split into two groups. One that are willing to give the humans a second chance, who are referred to as the good Zygons, and ones that want to wipe out the human race, who are referred to as the bad Zygons. And now that they know all they need to know about the Doctor from Sally, she's disposable and can be killed. However, Sally escapes before the Zygon can kill her. The story ends on a cliffhanger. The humans and Zygons have agreed on a coexisting plan and are about to sign an official peace contract. However, before the paper can be signed, a group of the bad Zygons burst through the doors. A fight breaks out between the two Zygon groups. Most of the good Zygons fall dead, however some escape, alongside Jonathan and Ronnie. However, the Doctor and Amanda are knocked unconscious and are taken away by a group of Zygons. And as they leave the room, they're replaced by Zygon duplicates. And the story ends on that cliffhanger. The 6th episode would have been Conquest of the Zygons, written by Nicholas Briggs and Stephen Moffat. The story sees the Zygon duplicates of the Doctor and Amanda trying to destroy the human race. They used the Doctor and Amanda's identities to gain access to a nuclear control room, as they plan to destroy the human race in a nuclear war. Meanwhile, the real Doctor and Amanda escape their prison and work with Ronnie, Jonathan, Sally, and the last few good Zygons to figure out the bad Zygons' plan and how to stop them. They search the Zygon mothership for any clues as to what's happening, and during this, Jonathan and Sally find a room containing the humans who've been copied by the Zygons and helps free them, with one of those people being Nikki. They eventually find out what the bad Zygons are planning and try to gain access to the nuclear base, which causes some issues with security as they believe the real people to be the Zygon duplicates, which forces the team to break into the base. After the team break into the base, the bad Zygons are about to launch the nuclear attack, and the unit team is ready to shoot the bad Zygons. The scene is very tense. The Doctor shouts and stops everyone. He then gives a big speech about life and how every second is precious. He reminds the bad Zygons on what it's like to lose their race and that he knows what it's like too. All of the bad Zygons stand down, except their leader of the group, who tries to activate the nuclear missiles. However, the leader of the good Zygon shoots him down. At the end of the story, the Zygons announce that they're leaving Earth, as after what happened today, they believe it'll only cause more issues if they stay, so they're off to find an uninhabited world to live on. The Doctor and Sally are about to depart in the TARDIS when Nikki stops them and asks if she can come with them, as she's made her mind up now. Sally begs the Doctor to let her come, and he says that it's alright with him. So Nikki boards the TARDIS and the three head off on a new adventure. The 7th episode would have been Reincarnation, written by Paul Cornell. The story sees the Doctor, Sally and Nikki arriving on a human colony world. They find the planet to be dying, with all life on the planet slowly dying off. The Doctor tries to help the people of the world, but they decline, as they say they have a way to fix this. It turns out that the people of the planet are planning a mass suicide, as they believe they'll eventually be reincarnated as creatures who are strong enough to tackle the new world. The Doctor wants to stop them, as he thinks they'll just die, which causes him to question his own actions. He doesn't know of these people. Perhaps they can be reincarnated. Or maybe they can't, and can the Doctor interfere with this? In the end, despite his protests and worries, the people of the planet kill themselves, leaving no one alive but the Doctor, Sally and Nikki. The Doctor's uneasy. Everyone is dead, but for how long? Will life ever return to the planet? Will they be reincarnated, or has he just witnessed a mass genocide? With these questions plaguing him, the Doctor and companions return to the TARDIS to get away from this world. This story was reviewed a lot more closely than the others at this time, as it was written by the upcoming showrunner Paul Cornell, with many seeing it as a taste of what to expect in the new era. It did receive some mixed reactions, with many people saying it was too dark for Doctor Who. However, it did excite the fans who loved it for the upcoming era. The 8th episode would have been Vincent and the Doctor, written by Richard Curtis. This story would have been pretty much how it is in real life. The only real difference would have been the inclusion of a second companion. Other than that though, it's pretty much the same story. The 9th episode would have been Hothouse, written by Jonathan Morris and Stephen Moffat. The story would have been about a scientist named Alex Marlowe, who's working with a group known as the League of Nature and trying to save the Earth from climate change. However, we soon discover that he's kidnapping illegal immigrants and using them as guinea pigs, as he is turning them into genetically engineered crinoids. We learn that these crinoids Alex is making are different, as he wishes to create crinoids who go through physical changes but keep the victim's original consciousness intact. We see Sally working undercover in the League of Nature and acting as a double agent, with the Doctor and Nikki working from the outside. However, around the halfway mark, the TARDIS team are discovered by Alex. Alex wants the Doctor to help him in his experiments, but he refuses. So in order to force the Doctor to cooperate, he infects Nikki with the crinoid DNA, which slowly turns her into a crinoid throughout the rest of the story. A lot of the rest of the story sees Sally with Nikki, as she slowly turns into a crinoid. We see Sally at her lowest point, as her closest friend turns into a monster. We see that Nikki is able to retain who she was, and that she's also able to communicate with the other plants in the greenhouse. At the end of the story, Alex is defeated when Nikki is able to order the plants in the greenhouse's rainforest to kill him, and the crinoids are defeated when the Doctor raises the temperature of the greenhouse to a dangerous level, which burns all the crinoids to death, including Nikki. At the end of all this, Sally is beyond furious at the Doctor and blames him for Nikki's death. The Doctor apologises to her and tries to defend himself, saying that there was nothing he could have done to save her, but Sally doesn't see it that way. She tells the Doctor that she never wishes to see him again and for him to go away forever before storming off. The Doctor, realising what he's done, is forced to leave Sally and return to the TARDIS alone. We then end the episode with shots of the Doctor in the TARDIS alone, looking depressed. And we see Sally in her house, covered in tears, before we fade to black and then the end credits. The final episode would have been The Final Farewell, written by Stephen Moffat. We begin with a pre-title sequence in New York, 1957. we see a man being told that his wife has been sent to hospital. He heads off to visit his wife, where he finds the hospital to be mostly empty, though he feels as though he's being watched by someone or something. He eventually finds his wife's room, and when he opens the door, he finds an old man and woman in bed. They're surprised to see the man, and they tell him that the old man is himself and that the woman is her wife. They tell him they're sorry, but it's too late. And as the man slowly backs out of the door, he turns around, and right behind him is a weeping angel. Then after the opening titles, we see the Doctor and Sally in modern day New York. We get the impression that some time has passed since the events of the last story. Sally has somewhat calmed down, but has not forgiven the Doctor fully. We learn that the two have agreed to make this their final adventure, as they want to end on a high. So the Doctor has taken them to New York, on what Sally believes will be her final adventure. At first all appears normal, though Sally thinks she's being watched by someone, and she swears she saw a statue move. Then later on, as the Doctor and Sally return to the TARDIS, they get mixed up in a gang war. A shootout ensues, and the Doctor and Sally get separated from each other. Sally takes cover behind a wall, however without the Doctor noticing, she's zapped back in time by an angel. The gunfire dies down, and one gang retreats, while the Doctor treats those who have been shot. Afterwards he tries to find Sally, but he can't find her anywhere. He goes into the TARDIS to use the scanner to track her down, but still can't. Instead he picks up strange time readings. As he exits the TARDIS, a bunch of cars pull up out of nowhere. A group of gangsters get out and throw the Doctor into the car, and tell him that the boss wants to see him. The car arrives at this posh building, and the Doctor is taken in to see the boss. And to the Doctor's surprise, he discovers the boss is none other than Deacon from season 41 and 42. Deacon recognises the Doctor, as he reveals he has pictures of all of his incarnations, including his next one. The Doctor asks what he's doing in 2008, and he says that he's on a mission with his company, as they've picked up strange time readings. And then he asks the Doctor if he's heard of the Weeping Angels. The Doctor realises what has happened to Sally, and after telling Deacon, they go back to the TARDIS to use it to track down Sally. They discover that she was sent to the year 1957. The Doctor tries to pilot the TARDIS to 1957, but it backfires due to the multiple time distortions in that year. Though with a bit of pressure, he's able to push the TARDIS through into 1957. However, this severely damages the TARDIS and causes a part of the console to explode. The Doctor and Deacon go searching for Sally. They eventually track her down in the middle of the street. However, before they have a chance to return to the TARDIS, they find themselves cornered by Weeping Angels. They retreat into a nearby hospital. They explore for a bit, but the three of them soon get separated by a Weeping Angel. We see Sally exploring the dark hallways, and she soon finds a room with the name S. Rider on the door. She opens the door in fear and sees her older self in a hospital bed, telling her to run. The Doctor quickly tracks them down and sees the older Sally. The older Sally is happy to see the Doctor, before she slowly drifts off into death. Sally is now scared for her life, but the Doctor is confused, as he knows Sally can't die here, as she dies in the future in space. Deacon soon finds the two of them, and they begin to theorise what is going on here. They theorise that the hospital is controlled by the Weeping Angels. They send people into the past and force them to spend eternity in the hospital until the day they meet their younger selves and die, as the angels feed off the time energy of the people and their days that never were. The trio then try and make their escape from the hospital before realising that the angels are still on their tail, so the three of them make their way to the roof to try and escape from there. They seal off the roof access, but the angels are slowly trying to tear down the door. Trying to find a way off the roof, the Doctor goes off to be alone with his thoughts. Sally asks Deacon what would happen if she was to die right here and now. and Deacon explains that she would create a paradox. And Sally ends up figuring out that if she kills herself, she might be able to defeat the angels with the paradox. She goes to jump off the roof, but the Doctor stops her in fear of losing her again. Sally calms him down and tells him that she has to do this to stop the weeping angels. If she's right, the paradox, along with the multiple time distortions, could kill them. However, the Doctor says that due to the time distortions and her being the centre of all this, she could end up being scattered across time and space, and he may never be able to find her again. Sally says she's sorry, but it's a risk they have to take. The two hug and say their goodbyes as the angels break onto the roof. Sally climbs back over the ledge and jumps. We see Sally falling to her doom as the paradox begins to kick in. The angels turn to dust and the whole city begins to burst into light around the Doctor and Deacon. We then see Sally just as she's about to hit the ground, and a beam of light forms around her. We then see her falling through a light that opens up below her, and then the light expands and covers the entire screen. The light fades out, and we see the Doctor and Deacon back in present day New York outside the TARDIS. They've done it. The angels are defeated, but Sally is lost forever. Deacon says that he's sorry and that he'd want to help, but with his job being done, he must return back to space. The Doctor says he understands and that he best be going too. We then see the Doctor in the TARDIS, patching up the console. The scanner then flicks back online, and the Doctor realises that the scanner is still connected to Sally's location. He locates Sally through the console, and finds where she is at the exact moment. Earth, in the year 150,053,800. The Doctor realises what the year means. He sets the TARDIS into flight and tries to track down Sally. And just as the TARDIS is about to land, the console sparks and the TARDIS is thrown off course. However, after adjusting some of the controls, the Doctor is eventually able to land. He steps outside the TARDIS and searches the area for Sally. He then spots Sally in the distance and goes over to run up to her. But then he hears a voice. His voice. His old voice. He hides behind cover and watches as Sally meets his younger self, and he realises that the TARDIS has sent him a year into the future, into the year 150,053,801, the year the 11th Doctor met Sally Ryder. This is it, the end of their travels. Sally is now with his younger self, and he can't change what happens next, and he returns to the TARDIS and leaves, before Sally or his past self notices him. We end the episode with the Doctor at the console, setting a few controls, before backing away from the console and sitting on a chair. He looks up in disappointment, as he realises he is once again alone. And that concludes season 45 of Doctor Who. A very good season for the show, and a very good end to the Steven Moffat era. Overall, the Moffat era would have been a really popular era of the show, with many people considering it to be the era that saved the show from its decline in popularity, and really gained back the public's interest again. So join me next time for Series 2 of United Nations. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.